What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about metal roofing, and we're just going to go through a little bit about the various different kinds of options. What are the pros and cons? A lot of people who are looking at getting a roof replacement, they're really excited about the idea of having a metal roof put on, but they have a lot of questions about it, so we're going to try to address some of that here today. So there's a few different types of metal roofing systems. So we have standing seam, which is that profile. It looks really nice with the standing seams, as the name implies. And sometimes they have sort of texture in the middle. It's called ribbing, which just sort of helps keep the panel from sort of warping over time. That's my personal favorite system. It's what's known as a hidden fastener system. So in metal, there's hidden fastener systems, which are ideal, and then exposed fastener systems, which aren't great. That's basically when you put the panel down and then just screw it into the decking, through the panel straight into the decking, so the fasteners are all exposed. And that's what an R panel system is. And I don't love our panel for residential roofs. If you're putting it on like a shed or a garage or something like that, fine. But I don't love the fact that the fasteners are exposed. With a roofing system, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And so with the fasteners, it's fine. It'll be okay, but it's not really all that much better than a shingle roof, because over time those fasteners that you put on, it's got a washer through it. And over time, the washer disintegrates in the sun, it just sort of heats up and breaks apart, and you have to have all those washers replaced. And you can have all the fasteners replaced on the roof, but it's a bit of an ordeal, and it wouldn't be as much as a roof replacement would cost, but still a little bit of a hassle. And then when you're pulling all those screws out and putting them back in, you do run the risk of having leaks and stuff like that in the future. So if you can avoid it, don't have an exposed fastener system on the roof. But we've also got like corrugated material, which is just sort of that wavy stuff. Again, not ideal for a residential house. There are metal shingles, which are really cool. They have like a really cool look that mimic asphalt shingles. But just, look a little bit higher end, and of course they're made of metal, so they last longer. And then there's stamped options as well, which basically kind of mimic a tile roofing system, and those look pretty cool as well. Again, pretty pricey, but they're going to be about similar to standing seam in terms of price, and similar in terms of quality as well. So really just an aesthetic choice at that point. But why should you think about installing a metal roof? So there's a few advantages. They look awesome, especially standing seam, and the stamped options look really incredible. They last forever. They're very resilient to storm damage, resilient to hail, resilient to tree limbs and stuff like that falling on it, where a shingle roof might not be. They have custom color options, so you can make it look however you want. So really, just ranges the entire spectrum in terms of color options there. They really have very low maintenance required, especially standing seam. You're, as opposed to a shingle roof where you might want to check out, make sure that the nail heads and stuff like that are kind of caulked here and there, clean off the roof and stuff like that. Standing seam roofs are really no maintenance required over time, and they're actually cooler than shingles as well in terms of just the heat. So you might think that metal heats up pretty hot, and it does, but it doesn't bake to the same level that shingles do. So the internal attic space actually stays cooler, and cuts down a little bit on energy bills too. The downside of metal, and this is where everybody gets hung up. They love the idea of a metal roof until we get to the price. So metal roofing typically costs 2 to 3 times more than a shingle roof does. So that can range from area to area, and what kind of quotes you're getting and all that kind of thing. Decent rule of thumb is that shingles will range somewhere between $400 to $500 a square, and metal roofing will range somewhere between $1,000 on the low end for a premium product like standing seam. Our panel less, maybe $500-600 or whatever. But for a good metal roof, you're looking at least $1,000 per square, and sometimes up to 12, 13, depending on the complexity of the roof, how many cuts, color, that kind of stuff. The history of metal roofing is actually also pretty cool. So they first developed a standing seam system in 1960, and it sort of just developed from there, and it's really kind of taken off as sort of the premier metal roofing option. And even in America, dating back to the early 1800s, Princeton University put a sheet metal roof on their buildings. So it's the history of metal roofing is very robust. They even used copper roofs back in ancient Rome. So there's a long and storied tradition and history of using metal roofing in protecting internal spaces and that kind of thing. So that's sort of a basic rundown on some of the pros and cons of metal roofing. I love it. If I could install it on every roof, I would, but it is cost prohibitive for some people. So oftentimes shingles just make more sense economically and stuff like that. But if you're looking at owning the place for a long, long time, which is why you also see it on historical buildings and that kind of thing very frequently. It's definitely worth the investment if you think it makes sense for you. It's just a matter of weighing those pros and cons. If you're going to be in that house forever or that building forever, it makes a ton of sense because you're never going to have to replace that roof, and it can make sense long term, but you just have to balance it against those cost considerations short term. So I hope you found that useful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I'll make sure to get back to you. Thanks.